Hi Armin. So I'm going to talk you through now. It's going to take a while, but to get you up to speed with editing the raw files and so forth. I'll just see how I go, and we'll try and get through this as efficiently as possible. There is a lot to take in, so we'll just have to see how we go. Now, so this is Lightroom. And to start off with, we're going to be doing Lamington National Park. Now at the moment there is a raw folder there. Now if I come into my Explorer, basically Lightroom is mirroring these folders here. So if I go into Queensland and into Lamington National Park, there's a whole bunch of folders here. Now these folders, because I haven't worked on Lamington National Park yet, don't show because there's no images in stock, post-process, or final. There should also be a pre-process folder in here, and it's not in there. Let me just go out and show you. So I've got a folder here called _new. Underscore just puts it at the top of the list. So this is basically just, well, it's not in there either. There should be a folder in here called pre-process. So I don't know why it's not there, but I'll go to new folder, pre-process, and I don't know, this folder structure must be old, because I'm pretty sure that I redid this to have all lowercase letters and hyphens in between the names. If possible, if we can always have lowercase letters and hyphens in between all wording to do with file naming. It's just a little, I've worked in large companies and I've seen on Linux servers and things, they if there's capital letters and things like that, it can just cause problems. So not that we're on a large server at the moment, but I want to get it set up right to start off with. So there's the folder structure of how it should look. So we'll talk about all of those as we go. For now, just know that in Lightroom, I can come up to, there's my C folder, and then within there is the Queensland folder, and there's the Lamington folder with raw. Now for any folder, you can right click on it and synchronize the folder. Lightroom will not show you images on the fly. You need to synchronize the folder to any new images which land in the folder, or even on its first attempt, because Lightroom has its own database, and I probably need to talk about the database. Let me just pause it and I'll have a quick look. Okay, so I've had a quick look. In here you've got new catalog, or open a catalog. Essentially, Lightroom does not edit your files at all, really. What it does is it remembers all the settings that you make to an image. So if I was to go into, let's say, anywhere in maybe a pre-process folder, have a quick look, something that I've made edits to. Well, it doesn't really matter. I'll just go back to the raw folder here. So this image here, if I go from the mosaic view into a single image view, and I go into develop, so moving out of file exploring, which is library, into develop, which is where you actually modify an image, it comes up with a whole lot of controls on the right hand side here. that have to do with manipulating the image. So I can do exposure and things that you're kind of familiar with in Photoshop. But the difference is that in Photoshop, once you save the file, it's kind of embedded in the file. But Lightroom works a little bit differently. This file in Windows Explorer will just remain as its base image, but Lightroom remembers the settings that we apply to this image. So a bit of highlights here, a bit of shadows there. It will remember all that. So when you're looking at the image, it looks like it is like a Photoshop file, but just know that the base image is never set in stone until you export the image out as a JPEG or something like that. So back up here where it says New Catalog, if I click on that, it will say where do you want to save the catalog. So you just need to pick somewhere on your hard drive where you would like the catalog to be saved. I would save it outside of eventually the iDrive sync folder, possibly on your C drive of your computer. It will grow, but it shouldn't be part of the iDrive sync. It's really to do with your computer. Now, as you will see, the catalog isn't really that important. It does remember settings, that is true, but the way that I work, you will soon see that I don't really rely too much on the catalog, and once the images are Lightroom doesn't take a long time for what I use it for, so it's not like you're going to spend hours in Lightroom. You spend a lot more time in Photoshop rather than Lightroom. Lightroom is a quick process which does a lot of work that Photoshop can't do, and then you go into Photoshop and do your fine adjusting. So once again, wouldn't get too caught up on the catalog. Just know that you need to save it outside the iDrive, and that's because you can't use Lightroom without setting up your catalog. So this folder of Lamington with RAW, I'm in my library. I'm looking at the images at the moment. The first step that I do with any shoot, first I need to start culling. So this is essentially just what was on my camera when I was out shooting, and it now needs to be narrowed down because trying to compare from just these images, the decision making there's just far too many images to make a decision. So the first step that I do is to cull the images down to my best images. Now you can see here that this image, that image, that image, these are all the same frame but at different exposures, and that is because this is a difficult lighting situation. If I show this image here, it's in the morning, and as you can see, to expose the ground, it basically essentially overexposes the sky. If I go to the next frame, you can see that the sky is looking better, but down below is looking quite dark. So what we need to do is HDR, high dynamic range, to capture the best parts of the image, and that's one of the things that Lightroom does very well. So how do I do that? If I click on the first image here, and then it looks like it, hang on, I'll just have a look. So I'm just going to use my arrow buttons and scroll through these. Yeah, there. I generally move the camera a little bit with each shot so I know where it ends. So you can see that that's moving. So from that image, clicking on Shift and selecting all of those images, and then right clicking, and then up to Photo Merge, HDR. So I don't know if I'm going to be using this image. Actually, I'm pretty sure I won't be, but that doesn't really matter. I'm just showing you how this works. I don't know necessarily if there has to be a point where I need to actually select the images. So I don't know if you're going to be doing this step. You will maybe doing the next step. Who knows in future though. It's good to show you all of this, so that you essentially may be able to do it all. Yeah, I mean, I've been to the locations, I've taken these photos, and I'll probably need to decide which ones are the ones to go in and which are the ones to go out. But anyway, you can see here now that there's a lot more dynamic range with the images. It's taken the best out of every frame. So HDR options. This deghost amount, this is kind of advanced. You don't really need to know this at the start, but sometimes this tree here, it might be a windy day, and that will be quite blurry because of the multiple frames. If I zoom on it at the moment, it doesn't look like there was any wind, so I can probably leave this on none, and you can go all the way up to high, and it will selectively deghost any movement due to wind. But other than that, you don't really need to know anything other than it will auto align all the frames, even though they were taken on a tripod. You can do handheld if you can keep your hand still enough, and it will auto align multiple shots, which sometimes if you're working indoors and couldn't be bothered with a tripod, it can be very good to just do handheld HDR, but tripods definitely do have advantages. Anyway, so I'm going to click the merge button, and that now will create the HDR, so I'll pause the video and show you in a sec. Okay, so this image here is a new image. You can see that it's got a plus and minus, which means that it has adjustments, and the photo has been cropped, so that was done in the auto align process. But essentially, if you see those icons, you know that it's not an original image, it's a Lightroom created image. And once again, so this image doesn't exist in File Explorer, it only exists in, actually no, sorry, I'm leading you astray. This is a DNG file. It has created an extra file in Explorer for HDR. Anyway, I'll talk more about, just disregard what I just said. So these images now are in a HDR. So anyway, that's kind of how you do HDR. Everything from this point on that I'm going to talk about would just apply to any image. So let's just say this was the image straight out of the camera. So we need to go into now, we should be going into develop, but there's an extra step that I need you to do. But yes, no, we go into develop. Now Lightroom has a preset feature which I use a lot, and I'll go through that now. So we're going to make a lot of adjustments on the right hand side here to do this image, but we're also going to use a preset. So every time that we get an image that we're ready to do, there's a lot of settings which will happen for every single image, and we don't want to be repeating that every single time, so we use a preset. So just here I'm going to click on base preset. This is my preset, and you'll see what happens to the image in a second once it applies that. And straight away out of the box there's a little bit of some images benefit a lot from the base preset, some not so much. This image did